What's up? Welcome to another episode of Bitches Love Sports. I am your host, Jazz Monet, and as usual, I am going live the day after a Colorado Buffaloes football game to talk about what happened, why it happened, and what it means for the team. So, if you've been paying attention to any of my coverage of the Colorado Buffaloes, you know that there are things that I pay attention to both on and off the field. And so we're going to get into both today. But before I get into all that, thanks to everybody who's watching. I know I'm going on a little bit later. Well, I was about to say a little bit later, but I feel like on Saturdays, yeah, it's just been kind of unpredictable because like normally the people that I'm watching are playing on Saturday. So yeah, I guess I can't really say I'm going live later than normal. The schedule's been all over the place. So with that being said, thank you even more for showing up. Because that means you have your notifications turned on and you are here literally because I said, hey, I'm going live. And that means the world to me. But yeah, if you're watching this and you're not already following me on Twitter or subscribe to my YouTube, please follow me, please subscribe so that you can get future notifications. And in the meantime, I'm just happy that you happen to luck up and be here. Um, but yeah, so a lot happened yesterday. And by a lot, I mean there were just a lot of implications based on what we saw on the field. Um, so just a heads up for anybody who maybe hasn't heard about what happened last night with Colorado. Last night, Colorado and Stanford played a game in Colorado. Buffaloes were at home. And for the longest time, and by the longest time, I mean all season, people have been saying, hey, we need the Colorado Buffaloes to get off to a good start. We need them to like, really cut out these slow starts and everything. And last night they did. They got off to a good start. They were looking good. Um, but as far as making that happen for 4 quarters, that didn't exactly go the way a lot of Buffaloes fans wanted it to go. They got up to an awesome 29 point lead by halftime, went into the locker room with that lead. And then when they came out, Stanford was looking like a whole different team, and the Buffaloes also were kind of looking like somewhat of a different team, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Um, but basically, what ended up happening was the game was tied by the end of regulation. They went into overtime, and through a series of unfortunate events, Stanford ended up beating Colorado by a score of 46 to 43. Hence the title of this video, How Did Colorado Squander a 29-point lead? And we're going to talk about how. We are going to talk about how, but first I want to get into a little bit of sound. This is something that I do with every post-game press conference. Sometimes I do a portion of it. Sometimes I do all of it. I'm gonna be honest, the day kind of got away from me this morning. So while I have the whole thing loaded up, I can't promise you that I won't skip through. So it might be like one of those days. But there's some of the things that Coach Prime says is connected to footage that I was able to pull up. And then Shedeur's answers, once again, it's like if you watch Shedeur, you watch Coach Prime, you see how there's like an alignment between their answers, but a little bit of a different approach. So we're going to talk about that too. But they were the only two people that I saw post game sound from. So I think it was just them. So yeah, I've got it loaded. We'll watch it and then we'll go from there. Martin says Colorado was a hot hand warmer. What does that mean, Martin? And also, good reminder, if you're watching on Twitter and you want to see what's happening in the chat and you want to tell me anything via the chat, please come over to YouTube and watch on YouTube because I don't see the Twitter comments for some reason. The way Twitter is set up, there's a thing where you can like click on the video and you're like in this other section of Twitter and you can leave comments there. I never see those. But also, if you like reply to the post that shows that I'm live, I might see those after the show. I usually don't check those during the show. So if you want to interact while the show's going on, please come over to YouTube, say something in the chat, and maybe you can explain what is meant by Colorado was a hot hand warmer pack. Are you talking about are you talking about how like the hot hands hand warmers like they start off real warm and it's like, oh, this is great, but then like they just don't stay hot for very long. And it's like, what happened? Because that's the only thing that I can think of. But yeah, let me pull up this video of the post-game press conference and we'll talk a little bit about what is said and then we'll go to some of the points that I have.
Hats off to our opposition today. They came back and played a heck of a game in the second quarter. They went on to get the victory. I'm truly upset. I'm truly disturbed. I'm going to try my best to stay composed and do the best of my ability to handle this press conference because you deserve my best, and I'm going to try my best to give it to you. Started out the game wonderfully, finally put it together in the first half like I desired, like we desired, like our players desired, and the fans. Wonderful first half. 29-0, I believe the score was there. Am I correct? And you surrender, I believe, 3 touchdowns unanswered, close to it, which I can't fathom right now. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. And then the thing just kept going left. I mean, at halftime, I talked to them about, the old cliche, people say it's 0-0, but that's not true. It's not 0-0, it's 29-0. But I felt complacency going into the half because we stalled offensively. We gave up some yardage as well. And just didn't like how I felt going in at halftime. We come back out, and here comes the complacency. Here comes that team that I can't stand, that you can't stand, that you can't understand how in the world that happens to us. But it did. And didn't turn it back on, I think, until late in the fourth quarter when we were able to go down and get a score, and we go down, and then they tied up and we got overtime, and you don't want to go in overtime because they have nothing to lose. Nothing to lose. I was surprised that they kicked the field goal the first time. I thought they was just going to go for 2 and try their best to get it over with. But they were resilient. Big win by them. Horrible loss by us. Let's go.
All right, before they get into questions, I want to talk about some of this that he mentioned because he said that he didn't like how the team felt going into halftime. So if y'all stick around long enough to see the film, which honestly, this actually shouldn't be that long of a show. So towards the end of the show, we're going to show the film on that. But yeah, so a lot of people who just looked at the score might be like, what is he talking about going into halftime? Things were still good going into halftime. If you actually watch, and I even had to go back and rewatch to actually really get a feel for what he's talking about, with about a little bit less than 5 minutes left in the first half, you can kind of tell that there's just a different vibe with the team. Almost like they were like, okay, we did the thing. Like we came out here, we got the fast start, and now we've got a 29-0 lead. And you could just tell there was just kind of this vibe, and it showed up in the form of penalties and other mistakes that we hadn't seen early in the half. But what he's saying is true. There was kind of this vibe, if you want to detect a vibe as just the general disposition of the team and how they seem to be performing on the field, yeah, it was definitely there. Um, and so we'll talk a little bit more about that in detail after we listen to the rest of what he and Shedeur have to say. Play.
Hey, Coach Brian Howard from the
How you
Bullet Daily
doing?
Camera. Obviously, that second half, it was the connection from quarterback to 13 was killing you guys, and Travis was on him quite a bit. What were you seeing in that matchup between Travis and?
Well, we didn't play well, not just Travis. I think it all started when we gave up on the 97-yard touchdown, which was flat out ridiculous. That's when it all started. That's when all the foolishness, all the complacency, all the mess started. I mean, how in the world we give up? Jesus. Uh, our secondary did not play the best game, especially at the cornerback position.
Okay. So, Carlton, I'm gonna respond to your question. It's two Z's, by the way. But what you're asking here, I actually had similar questions last night while I was watching because Travis is a beast, right? At his best. But he's just coming off of a pretty significant injury that he had to receive significant medical treatment for. I don't know for sure that involves surgery, but a lacerated liver and him being out as long as he was, I don't care how he looked at practice. And like, we can all see the videos of practice. We can all go on YouTube and watch the well off videos and see that there were time periods where guys were on the field practicing and he was off to the side talking, which is fine because, like I said, he's coming off of a significant injury. But what that tells me is if you're going by how he looked at practice to determine what he's ready for in the game, that's not really a good measure because he doesn't do nearly as much, or at least this past week, he didn't do nearly as much as practice, it seemed, as he did on the field. Um, and regardless, just coming off of that and the intensity that the difference in intensity from like practicing something and then having people actually going after you, actually hitting you. Yeah, I didn't think he should have been on the field as much as he was either. So as far as how the defense was run, one thing I did like about this game is that the broadcast showed a lot more of the OC and the DC, and that was pretty cool because I think in games past, we just see a lot of Coach Prime, and he's not very animated, and I think people were amused by that for a long time, but we did get to see the DC and the OC very involved in what was happening on the field. But as far as personnel, I have no idea. I don't know whose decision it was to have Travis in the game as much as he was, but yeah, I don't think that was a good idea. And in the second half, whether it was a mental lapse or a physical lapse, you could see that he wasn't able to keep up with 13. I keep forgetting how to pronounce this young man's name, and I apologize, but that's why I want to look at it and make sure I get it right. Um, Io Minor, I think is how you say it. Ayo Minor. Y'all know who I'm talking about, 13, who went off in the second half, and we're gonna talk about him too. But yeah, it did seem like he was having a little bit of trouble with him later. And Carlton adds, they should have gotten out of man by now. They should have adjusted to the slants. Coach Prime should have seen this and adjusted. Cormani or the other CBs should have been playing. And I'm pretty sure he'll hear about that. I don't know why Cormani wasn't playing, because the last time he did play, he proved himself to be a good contribution to the defense. The only thing that I can think is that all that talk about discipline and accountability that happened this week, where he was talking to them about, like, why are you mad at me? And I'm trying to get you to be men. The only thing I can think is that a good portion of that applied to Cormani. And because of that, Cormani did not get playing time. Carlson adds all the penalties with rotating players on and off the field. I don't understand. This was a badly coached game by the DC and especially Coach Prime. No excuses. Yeah, that mess was wild, but we're gonna talk about all of that.
Coach Matt Smith, 104 through the fan. It
Yes, sir.
seemed like in the second half, maybe just some communication issues there with the coaching staff. Did you feel that?
In what regards?
Substitution errors. It felt like-
Substitution on defense?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. There's so many different packages that you run and so many different personnel, but you got to understand we're basing our change of personnel on what they're changing. So that kind of happens when they having different personnel groups and the referee is holding the game up, so we get a chance to substitute as well. What was happening is one guy was coming off the field appropriately, and he saw something, and he stopped. So that gives us 12 men on the field. It was things like that that was transpiring, which we can't even wrap our head around it because we practiced this stuff repeatedly.
So, real quick, I didn't like how he brushed off that answer because I'm like, yes, what he said was true. That happened, but they've never had as many substitution penalties as what they had in this game. I don't think I've ever seen a college team get that many substitution penalties back to back. The only thing that I can think of that explains his response, like the way that he responded to this question, is that he wasn't aware. Um, it seems like, and I'm basing this off a pattern of questions he answers and doesn't answer in his post-game press conferences, and then he has a weekly press conference and he might come back and say something different. I think immediately after the game, sometimes there's just some information that he doesn't have. There's just some stuff that he doesn't keep entire track of during the game, and he'll go into these press conferences not knowing, because you'll see later in the press conference, he didn't seem to realize how many penalties they had as a whole. So I think he didn't realize just how many times they got penalized there and how many times it was down and goal situations. Because that might not sound a lot, but when you go from down and goal and it's 6 yards, and then a penalty puts that to 3, that makes a difference, especially when we've seen multiple times that your defense is able to stop someone at the 1 yard line, at the 2 yard line. And so now you're moving that offense up 3 and 4 yards closer because of penalties, which changes, maybe a potential 3 point play to an almost guaranteed 6 point play. That's significant. And they did it multiple times. And I really think that he just was so focused on other things that happened, the things that he's clearly upset about, that he just was not paying attention to the substitution penalties. Carlton said, I love Coach Prime like everyone else, but for this game, we are making too many excuses for him. If Kermani got in trouble or isn't watching film or practicing well, don't dress him out. That's debatable. I don't know enough about their system in terms of discipline to say whether or not that should have happened. And like I said, sometimes he'll go into these press conferences prepared to talk about one thing. And by the time the midweek press conference comes out, some cases I'm gonna say I'm reserving judgment on that until I have more information. And if we don't get more information, then yeah, we might have a different conversation.
Again, along the same line, some of the substitution things, the penalties. You've defended Coach Kelly at every turn.
Yeah.
This is one where now people are going to start pointing fingers, and you said,
Well,
that
if you're going
goes.
to point the finger, point it at me, because if I'm allowing it, it should be on me, not him. Point it on me. We go over this stuff. And there are times where you know what group is in, you know what group you're on, but you have a lapse of understanding in those crucial moments. Right now, we're not built for the moment. We're not built for the moment. Some of our players aren't built for the moment where they have to make a play, or they have to keep contained, or they have to make a block, or they have to get another yard. We're not built for the moment right now.
Hey, Coach, Tyler King with the Denver Gazette.
Yes, sir.
You guys had 17 penalties tonight. That was something that was a positive for you guys early in the season, was the
Wow.
lack of penalties.
I didn't know it was that many.
What has led to the
See, he didn't know.
amount of penalties you guys have been accumulating over the last couple weeks?
Not being smart, not being disciplined, not understanding the moment. That's what that is. Yeah, that's what that is.
Hi, Coach. Adam Lister, Tiger 24/7 Sports. We saw Trevor Woods play a little closer to the line of scrimmage,
Yeah.
linebacker tonight.
Yeah.
Is that a matchup with Stanford, or do you like him in that role?
No, I love him in that role. I really do. We have some good safeties that we have, and Trevor is that kind of team guy that's going to do whatever he needs to do to help his team. And that's something that I'll do that. And I think he played well. I haven't watched the film yet, but thank God that he's willing to sacrifice what he's accustomed to doing to help us improve ourselves.
Hey, Coach. Jake Schwannis, DMVR.
How you
Just curious
doing?
about Travis, just his conditioning. Where do you feel like that
His
was?
condition is great. It was just some plays he made, some plays he didn't. Just so happens the plays that he didn't make at the end are magnified. But the plays he made kept us in the game.
Hi, Coach.
How you doing?
Nikki.
That's debatable, but that's all I'm gonna say about that for right now. Well, not debatable in the sense that like Travis definitely did make some very significant plays that got them the lead that they had, but I don't think that what he did that was positive is enough to justify glossing over the ways that he seemed to fall short in the second half. I do wish that they had substituted somebody else in place of Travis, even just to see how it went. There was a point at which we definitely should have tried. Oh, look, I'm referring to the Buffaloes as we now. Here we go. Carlton said at least 5 of the 17 penalties was getting players on and off the field. I actually have a count on that. So we'll know for sure after we get done with sound. Travis conditioning is not great. Travis is better as wide receiver than cornerback. This game he definitely was. And that's not to say that's all the time. In general, he might be. You might have a point. But I think that where Colorado is now, they need him at cornerback. But the way he was last night, he wasn't doing the kind of things that he normally does as cornerback that justified keeping him in the game. Had he been that same person the whole 4 quarters, by all means, keep him in there. But he wasn't. And we knew he was coming back from a significant injury. And so that's why I'm just like, okay, you see that he's having trouble. We know that there are a lot of reasons he could be having trouble. Why not try somebody else, knowing that you do have other good corners who, even though at their best, they're not as good as Travis at their best, at his best, but what they bring to the field right now could possibly be better than what Travis is bringing to the field right now. You said he protects Travis. Hmm, I don't know. I don't pay enough attention to that to actually debate with you. So I'll accept that for now, and I'll keep a closer eye on that. So maybe next, well, when's their bye? Yeah, they have a bye coming up. Next time we do this, we can talk a little bit more about that.
Edwards Hughes Sports Report. I remember you said before that Shedeur puts on his cape and saves these games for
Right.
you. What kind of happened in overtime where maybe there was miscommunication on that play when it turned into an interception?
Yeah,
What were you
first of
seeing
all, he
there?
should have never thrown the ball. Should have never thrown the ball. I don't know if they played it on a replay to show what happened with receivers on that play. Did they show it? Right. Yeah, what happened? 'Cause I want to see it because I know what happened. I want to see what they showed. Yeah, I think something else transpired on that play that shouldn't happen. So he shouldn't have never thrown the ball though.
I'm not really sure what he's talking about that shouldn't have happened. And that's a play that I haven't rewatched as much as some of the other plays. Um, but what I do remember seeing there is that one, it was a third and goal situation, so he definitely didn't need to throw that ball into like a dangerous area. They could have gone for a field goal just to force Stanford to have to make a touchdown, or they could have tried again on fourth and goal. But I do know that Stanford immediately went into man coverage right after the snap. So there weren't a lot of like really clean targets for him. And so I don't know if that's what he's referring to or what. And maybe it'll come out later. But that's the only thing that I can think of when he's like something else transpired. I'm like, you mean the defense doing a good job like they're supposed to? I don't know what you mean. But let's keep going.
Just give us another down. Let's kick field goal. Stay in it.
Hey, Coach.
Yes,
Tony
sir.
Casolo, Buffaloes Wire. Kickoffs have been an issue for your team this year. I think it's a handful of times you've kicked it out of bounds, especially I think it's twice after a personal foul penalty.
Yeah.
Can you say what the issue is or what the
I don't
idea
think
of
we had
trying
that
to
problem
smooth there?
today. I mean, the kickoff that we did have that went out of bounds, it was going to be marked at the 20 regardless. So it was a moot point. Other than that, I think Jace did a good job on kickoffs today. We improved in that area today.
Hey, Coach. Pat Rooney, Boulder Daily Camera.
Yes, sir.
When you had overtime against
If we're being real, Jace was actually hot and cold. Like he had that one like really good one, and then he had, well, I'm thinking of both kickoffs and punts. Maybe he really is referring to just the kickoffs. I don't know. Let's just keep going.
Colorado State, you took the ball first when the offense had a lot of momentum.
Yeah.
Why the decision tonight to get the offense out there?
We have a really good quarterback, and I trust him. That's why. And we went right down and scored.
Coach, you mentioned the complacency with this team. You guys now have 2 weeks before you play again.
Right.
Is this a good time for a bye week to try to fix some?
No, it's not a good time for a bye week. I mean, if you're having problems where you're injured and you have quite a few injuries, it's a good time for a bye week. But when you're playing like you're playing, you don't want a bye week. You want to work it out. You want to make it happen. I wish we could play again next week. I really do.
We talked about the complacency of the defense. And
Complacency of everybody.
yeah, I
Yeah.
wanted to talk about the offense a little bit. I mean,
Martin, you were wrong for this, but you're not wrong. Here's what I think is happening during this press conference. This is just my evaluation. I think he's upset and he wants to look more into what happened, but he's obligated to do this press conference. And so there are just certain questions that he doesn't want to answer until he has an opportunity to like look a little bit closer at some things. I think that's a lot of it. Carlton, as for your comment about him blaming it on the receivers, I don't think that's going to happen either. Um, and I only say that because the only people that I've ever seen him like really like call out for real are people who are literally not preparing the way that they're supposed to prepare. That's been a big thing for him. But I've never heard him say a specific person fell short during the game. And if what he's referring to that wasn't supposed to happen, because like right after where I paused it, he was like, get us another down and we can kick it. I really have a feeling what he's referring to is that they went into man and it was man on man, and Shedeur should not have passed that ball. He should not have made that throw. And I really think that's the thing that he's referring to.
Giving up that amount of points in the second half is obviously unacceptable, but
Yes, yes.
the offense obviously also has to contribute in some way.
Yeah, true.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, you're right. I don't need to talk about it. You said it.
Coach,
Just
Juwan Mitchell, I didn't see him out there at all.
Yeah.
Is he with this team still?
Yeah.
Is he injured?
Ask him what happened. Next guy.
Just simply
yeah, you can tell by his answers to the last couple questions. He's annoyed and just wants to get out of there.
put, I mean, how does this team go forward after a defeat
You
like
have
this?
no choice but to go for it. That's life. This ain't the only thing that's going on in life. I mean, all you guys are dealing with something. You still moving, you still progressing, you still going forward. We got to do the same darn thing. We didn't expect that. There's a lot of things that goes on in life that's unexpected, and this is one of them. We got to knuckle up and let's go. We can't sit down and have no pity party. Y'all don't feel bad for us. Some of y'all are ecstatic about what transpired today, and I know that, but that's cool. We're going to take this one on the chin because we deserve it. 29, I've never been in one of these type. I don't remember, from youth on, I don't remember being up 29-0 and losing a football game. I really don't. This is a little tough for me, and I'm trying my best, and I thank you all for your patience, and I thank you for your heart, because this is really tough for me. But you can see when I'm amping up and I kind of see this stuff coming, you can see why I go at it like I go at it, because I could feel my team. I could feel what's about to transpire, and here we go.
I mean, how important are the next maybe 24
Every
to
game
40
is important.
next 24 to 48 hours in terms of flushing
He's
this
trying
and
so hard to
moving
get this
past
Well, you
question
gotta
out.
they gotta, what I just said in the locker room to the team is they gotta make up in their mind, are they in love with this game or they in like with it? Because when you love something, you give to it unconditionally. You give everything.
So this is a significant part. He said, what I just told to the team was you have to decide if you're in love with this game or if you're in like with it. And so what he's about to talk about is his love for the game. And I think during the live broadcast of this press conference, a few people got a little bit distracted by him talking about his own love for the game instead of focusing on why that's a message to the team. Because people were like, oh, he's such a narcissist, right? And I'm like, okay, I get it. You don't like Coach Prime. Cool. Like a lot of these people be in these live chats. Can't stand this dude. Fine, whatever. But I think whenever you make a message, when you send a message like that to the team, that's based on his perception of what one of the biggest issues is. And I can't really blame him for that because obviously the team has the physical capabilities to get the job done. We see them pull out those capabilities over and over again, right? But whenever we're talking about a love for the game, especially as he describes it, it means wanting it so bad that it takes precedence over everything, including whatever temporary joy you might feel in the moment. Like part of loving football, in the way that he wants his team to love football, means that you delay all of that until the job is actually done. And I think he's not seeing that from his team. He's not seeing them step up in certain ways. He's not seeing them like wake up fast enough whenever they start to fall off. And I think that's what he's talking about. But let's listen to the rest of his statement.
Thing you got to it, but when you like it, that's just the button you push, and it lights up in a like. That's what they do on social media. So we got to figure out, do they love it or do they like it? And it's hard for me because I love this. I love it. Without a shadow of a doubt, I am truly 100% in love with this thing, and I just want people to match me. Just match my passion, match match my heart, match my love, match my consistency, just match my mannerisms, just match every darn thing I give to this game. I love this. Sadly, I love it so much, but the game don't even occupy the ability to love you back. That's a strange love, isn't it?
Coach, you spoke, Patrick Dawes, CoachPrime Sports. You spoke about struggles in the secondary. What are some things that you and the coaching staff are going to look at throughout the bye week?
Well, you can always look at personnel, but it is what it is. It is what it is. So it was hard to look at. Defensive backs either play to make a play or play to stop a play from being made. I like the guys who play to make a play. I really do. We got to get to that point. Thank you. God bless.
One thing about Coach Prime is you'll never hear him say, "I'm not prepared to answer that question." He'll just kind of say something else and answer the question in a way that he's prepared to answer it. And some people hate that. And I can understand why people would hate that. But at the same time, I get it. You would rather say something that you're prepared to say than say something that you might end up regretting saying later. But that's another reason why some of those answers sound the way that they sound. All right, so I'm gonna fast forward a little bit so that we can get to Shedeur's portion, which is not as long. What was interesting to me about Shedeur's portion was that he seemed sad, but you can also tell that he's the type of dude that's conditioned to not come off as sad, or even told that maybe like there's no like being sad is unproductive, like you have to take action to correct whatever has gone wrong. Um, but that could be my interpretation. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. But let's listen to what he has to say.
What are the initial emotions after a stunning loss like that, where you guys were kind of rolling so much in the first half, and then to be sitting here with a loss?
I feel like any loss is like you don't really take it that good. I don't think it's feel good losses. I feel like all losses feel the same.
Dad was just talking about how he noticed complacency heading into the locker room.
Yeah.
What was his message at the half there?
I'm not gonna lie, I don't even remember because I was just so locked in. I was just a different mind frame you got to get in when you know you're playing 4 quarters. So really, I just like staying just focused and staying in that mode and really just carry that throughout the whole game.
Do you feel like you tried to change the approach as an offense heading into the second half, or because it had worked so well in the first half, it was let's just keep doing it, man? 29 points.
Well, I'm not sure. I just executed the plays that was called. I didn't really look at it in a big grand scheme of things.
Shedeur, Troy Finnegan, CU Sports Report. Take me through the last play in overtime, the interception, and what you saw on that play as you were kind of escaping, trying to make a play.
It was just a dumb play. I just threw it up. Simple.
Hey, Shedeur, just what was it like playing with Travis again tonight, though?
It was good. He's explosive player. It's good to have him back out there. We got to work through some plays and stuff with him to make sure he's all the ways in the right spot. But when the ball gets in his hand, he's explosive.
Sure, Kyle Newman from the Denver Post. How do you guys flush this one and kind of keep the ultimate goal and a bowl season in mind after this tough loss?
I mean, I'm not even thinking that far yet. I got to at least feel this one first.
Sure, on the first drive of the second half, when you kind of took that sack that kind of pushed you guys on the 4th down play, did you feel a loss of momentum there at all?
No, it was never a loss of momentum. It was just we just got to understand you can't peak too high, you can't be too low. You got to always stay level-headed with everything. That was the biggest thing. It was just like, we never had that feeling of dominating in the first half. So then that's when a lot of people, you'll say it peaked too fast to where everybody don't really understand. Like, we got to be the same way, same approach, same everything. It's a difference with saying that, and it's a difference with meaning and going about it, each and everything. So slow starts just always happen when just one or two people mess up on a play, and then it just messes up.
And what was so easy?
So what he just said was significant because he basically admitted, like, yeah, we got that big lead, and then there were some people on the team who, they just got a little bit too high off that lead. And I'm wondering if he remembers enough about what happened to actually like hold those people specifically accountable. But that's what I mean whenever I say, like, in a few episodes I've said sometimes you don't know until you know. And I do think that there are some people on that team who, like we've talked in the past about, their lack of experience against certain types of opponents. And I do also think that there are some people, whenever he talks about there's a difference between saying something and then actually doing it. Um, some of that might happen because people just lack the level of discipline that they need to like say what they mean and stick to it. And then I think that there are some people who literally just are in new situations and they don't really have a good grasp on what that feels like. They don't necessarily catch it whenever they're starting to get lazy because they're excited. That is a thing with some people. And then after it happens a couple times, they start to recognize a sign and they catch it sooner. But I really do think that there are just some people who, because they've never been in that situation, they don't even know their own patterns and their own habits well enough to catch things in the very beginning. And I think that's another reason why so many people are so big on, like, yeah, it's kind of amazing that Colorado is seeing the success that they're seeing with the team that they have and the way that it was put together. Because not only is the team new to each other, but they are new to being in this situation, a lot of them. And so yeah, they're trying to figure it out. But like I said, I really hope that Shedeur remembers enough of the people to like help hold them accountable, whether it was, just their own lack of discipline or it was just the newness of the situation that kind of got to them a little bit.
What was so easy for you guys offensively in the first half that kind of disappeared there in the second half?
Attention in the detail. That's it.
Shedeur, how disappointing, with the way the offense was going in the first half, how disappointing that offensively you guys couldn't get much going in the second half to help your defense out when they were on the run?
It was definitely frustrating because, like I say, it was one or two players away from really hitting explosive plays, from doing the right things each and every drive we had. So when you really, like when we look at the film and what I noticed on the field is just all 11 players got to do their job, and that's it. We can't, because the stuff going to catch up when they catch up, and it caught up to us today.
Folks from the outside, there's not much middle ground on you guys. There's lovers and there's haters, and you've addressed both of them. What do you say to outsiders who are going to say, man, 13 went off, Travis had too many snaps, he came back too early, he was tired, he was this, he was that, because they don't know. You know. What'd you say to them?
I mean, I don't really think that's a focus point for me at all. I'm mainly focused on the team and focused on what we need to improve on, and the people gonna hate you and love you, so you gotta understand that's what you can't be happy when everything's good and sad when everything's bad. You gotta be the same person regardless. So that's basically where I just stay and how I live my life, is just level-headed throughout the whole game, staying the same way, not getting too up, not getting too down, because as you've seen, things could go left quick, and today's a moment to show that live in person.
Sure, your dad was saying in here earlier that he's never really been a part of a game. He can remember that, he blew a 29-point lead at halftime. I'm sure the same can be said for you. How do you move on from a game like this?
I mean, we got to accept this one first, and it's just a different level of, I would say, focus, different level of attitude, different level of just seriousness, because the little things, even like when we score touchdowns, we still busting routes. Like, we just can't afford to do that because it's going to catch up when it catch up. So that's the main thing. Like, understand when guys busting routes and when I'm not making the right read, getting the ball in my hand, doing the right thing, then there got to be some punishment for it. We got to be able to grow from it and not keep making the same mistakes.
Ralph Simpson on Destiny TV. First, I want to condemn you. What you did in the community, how you helped the community and your team.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Jordan had to have some setbacks
Mm-hmm.
before you won championships.
Yeah.
The Detroit Pistons had to have some setbacks
I don't even remember
before
this
they won some
question. What is this dude
championships.
talking about?
You got some championships coming.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Some things happen for a reason,
Mm-hmm.
and y'all got greatness in you, and it's coming.
For sure. Appreciate it, man. I feel the same way.
Ariel Arsuto, 9 News. Your coach, father, said that his message after the game was that some players either like or love the game,
Mhm.
and there's a separation between the two. Do you feel personally that there is that separation in the locker room, that some players just aren't fully buying in, they don't fully love this game right now?
I mean, I'm not gonna point fingers. That's not what I'm here for. I let the coaches. That's what they're here for. They're here to guide us. So I can't really say that and throw no teammate under the bus because that's not what type of player I am. The guys know that, you know, and that's it. But I'll never put a teammate down and say he's not fully in if he probably is.
Not to name names or anything, but do you feel like that might be an overall vibe for some players?
Possibly. I feel like it could be that everywhere in the country. But we possibly could have it too. So that's not up for me to decide. I'm just up to decide, just make the right reads, win games, get the ball in my hands, and just push the team. Appreciate it.
Okay, so and thanks, Carlton. I realized what he was saying as he was talking. Just I really didn't remember that part of the press conference, and I was just kind of like, where is he going with this? So the last couple of things that Shedeur said, I'm gonna be honest, I don't know how I feel about them. And so maybe y'all can tell me how y'all feel about it. But him talking about how he's not gonna throw a player under the bus, I'm like, okay, I get that, but I also think that as a leader of a team, you do have to be prepared to say something. And I think about players, you know, like Dak Prescott, for example. People have asked Dak Prescott about his approach to leadership and how he interacts with his teammates. And one of the things that he's talked about is the fact that different teammates need different things, and there are some people who need you to get in their face and like really get on them when they're messing up, and then there are other people who like it's better to have like a more calm approach, or maybe approach them after practice, after the fact, you know, so on and so forth. But he's had to figure that out. He's had to learn. And so I think that's something that if Shedeur is going to, you know, maintain this role as a leader of the team, he's going to have to learn. And that means you can't look at every criticism as throwing a teammate under the bus. Sometimes you calling a player out is what's best for the team, because sometimes that's what some people are going to need in order for them to get their head on straight and make sure that they're doing what they need to do in order to help the team. So it's like if you just look at it as like, oh, I don't want to call out one of my teammates, I don't want to throw somebody under the bus, so I'm not going to do it. In a way, you're kind of like shirking your responsibility as a leader. Like I think as a leader, you have to figure out like not just say, okay, I can't do this. You have to figure out, okay, how can I do this? How can I hold this person accountable in a way that's constructive? How can I make sure that they do what they need to do and that they know that they're falling short without it just being like I'm throwing them under the bus? Because to me, throwing a person under the bus is just like making sure that they're punished. Like you're doing something I don't like, so I'm gonna make sure that you suffer for it. I'm gonna make sure that you pay for it, right? Whereas holding someone accountable means you give them a choice. It means you're observing what they're doing and you're saying, hey, we need you to behave a different way. We need you to approach your role on this team a different way. I need you to do this, or else this is what's going to happen. So a leader can hold people accountable without throwing people under the bus. And sometimes there's like a sensitive balance between your different approaches with different people to make sure that that's what you're doing. But as a leader, you have absolutely got to learn that balance. You can't just say, I'm not going to criticize my teammates. I'm not going to call them out. I'm not going to point out where they're falling short. Not as a leader. You can't do that. You have to be willing to step up and be like, hey, if something you're doing is hurting the team, or if you're doing something that means you're not fulfilling your role properly, I'm going to hold you accountable. I'm going to make sure that you know that you're messing up, and I'm going to do whatever it takes or whatever I have to do to get you back on track. That's what you do as a leader. Um, Martin said they got those L and D patches for those situations. But here's the thing, Martin, Shedeur has an L patch. So like he should be acting like that. I don't know the list of people who have L patches, and honestly that would be something fun to do, to make a list of all the people who have L patches. And then the next time I come on here, start calling those people out and be like, yo, why is Coach Prime in these press conferences talking about people don't really love the game, talking about there was a lack of accountability, talking about people were kind of getting a little bit soft before the half. Why the hell do all of y'all have L patches on your chest and ain't none of y'all handling these situations? Maybe that's the next conversation that needs to happen. So, Martin, I know you're good at this kind of thing. If you want to look at footage with me and help me make a list of all those people, so next episode we can just start calling them out and be like, yo, Shedeur, yo, Shiloh, you wearing the L patch. What's up? Answer these questions. What's going on? Um, that could be fun. That could be a fun episode. Carlton said the leader can praise in public and reprimand in private. Is not for us on YouTube or media. You're right, but I can do all that one-on-one, face-to-face, and not in front of the cameras. That's fair. But I even think in that case, he could have said that. He could have said, hey, I'm not going to do that here. What he said, and I'm just going by what he said. What he said was, I don't feel comfortable doing that. I don't want to throw somebody under the bus. Now, if what he meant is what you're saying, okay, fair enough. Maybe he meant I'm not going to do that, and then the in public is silent. But I was just going off of his statement where it sounded like he was uncomfortable doing that at all. So we'll see. We'll see. Um, but yeah, so I now that we've heard all that, I do want to talk about the answer to the question of how did this happen? How in the world did this happen? So going back to what Coach Prime said about how before the second half, he started to sense a little bit of a difference in the team. Now, admittedly, that was something I didn't look into until I heard him say that. But I did find a couple of things that I do think justify his point. Now, with it being that I might be a little bit biased because I heard him say it first, it's one of those things that I'm like, okay, here's what I saw. Do with this information what you will. You know, maybe it legitimately was a drop off in energy or a drop off in focus, or maybe it was just me looking for an answer to Coach Prime's question, and here's what I found, and it's maybe not as significant as I'm going to make it look. Um, but what I noticed was it kind of all started around the time of that first sack that happened in the second half. So the Colorado Buffaloes, they ended up as a team with 17 sacks that cost them 127 yards. And not 17 sacks, 17 penalties that cost them 127 yards. And some of those penalties came with like giving away really good positioning that they had as an offense, or giving away first downs to the defense. So as is always the case with penalties, there was a greater cost than what we saw in just terms of yardage. Um, in the first quarter, they had three penalties. There was a false start, an unsportsmanlike conduct, and then that was their first substitution infraction actually happened in the first quarter. And then in the second quarter, they got an illegal use of hands, another unsportsmanlike conduct, an offsides penalty, a holding penalty, and a false start. So before the second half, they already had 8 penalties. So one thing that I would say in terms of Coach Prime being held accountable is just like, how did you not realize how many penalties they had? 8 penalties in the first half, that should have been a conversation at halftime. What the hell is going on? Substitution infraction, which it took Stanford being 1st and 10 to 1st and 5. Now they didn't convert off of that drive or anything, so I guess I can see why you might have looked past it. But that's just something that shouldn't happen, especially when you have when the game is going in your favor the way that it was. Because I'm just kind of like, what could you be so pressed about that causes you to make such a careless mistake when your team is doing well and there's really no pressure on you? You know what I'm saying? That would have been a red flag to me as a coach. So 3 penalties in the first quarter, 5 penalties in the second quarter. That should have absolutely been a conversation, especially with 2 of those penalties being unsportsmanlike conduct. Once again, same thing like with the substitution infraction. Why the hell are you getting an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty when you're up by so much and there's no pressure on you? All that can mean is that you're out here doing foolishness unnecessarily and it's costing your team. And once again, easy to look over it whenever you have the lead, but things like that cost them in the second half. So those things specifically, like 2 false starts, 2 unsportsmanlike penalties, one substitution infraction, all that points to is just like a lack of focus. These are pre-snap penalties, post-snap penalties, things that have nothing to do with, oh, well, I'm just putting in so much effort during the game that it's costing me. Because even things like that I can understand. Coaching roller derby, I can remember one game specifically against a Mexican team where the team that I was coaching, they seemed to have an issue like keeping up with the intensity and physicality. And so one of the things that I said during one of our timeouts, I was like, look, this is a game where it's okay for you to push the envelope. I would rather y'all go too hard and then I have to pull y'all back than for y'all to just kind of be like playing it safe and then we never see what could have happened had we just gone a little bit further. So, if you've got like a muzzle on or whatever, something's holding you back, you're like too scared of getting penalties, too scared of wearing yourself out. When we get back on the track, do whatever you need to do. And if you're doing too much, I'll let you know. Let me tell you when to back off. Um, and so those are the when you get penalties that way, when you get penalties with that mentality, those are the kind of things that I can understand a little bit, especially with it being that we were like people were telling the team like, yo, you need to get off to a better start. But false starts, unsportsmanlike conduct, substitution infractions, like no, that's unnecessary and should have definitely been addressed at halftime. Um, but what happened with 4:44 left in the second quarter was Shedeur got sacked for the first time during the game at that point. And the way that it happened to me said that Stanford might have seen something in the offensive line that let them know one of the adjustments that they could make after halftime that would make a big difference. And I say it based on this. I wrote an article earlier this week about Deion Sanders' comments about the Cowboys whenever he was saying that some of the Cowboys might not have enough discipline and enough grit in order to quote unquote get the job done. And I say quote unquote, that's not what he said, but like basically that's what he was saying. But it was the quote where he went on Inside the NFL with Ryan Clark. We've talked about this, and he said the Cowboys have some players that's supposed to be dogs, but dot dot dot. And so in this article, I said something for which he has become known since taking on that role with the Buffaloes head coach is his assessment of dogs. In sports, the term dog or dog is associated with athletes that display a higher level of toughness or aggressiveness than the majority of peers. And then there are even references to dog as an acronym. And so there's discipline athlete with grit, and then there's also discipline, accountability, work ethic, and grit are a couple of the acronyms that I've found. But then I went on to say one of the best explanations for what a dog is, though, is Coach Prime's description of his own son, ShedeurSanders. A few weeks ago, Coach Prime said of Shiloh is a dog. He's a leader of men. He's not shy with his words. He's practicing his butt off. He's trying to hit everything he sees out there, but he's doing his job. They want to be dominant. They don't just want to win. And so in that explanation, what I hear is two things. I hear, physicality, I hear dominance, but I hear when I think about doing your job, I also think about knowing the game and knowing it to the point where certain things just aren't going to trip you up. Certain things just aren't going to be a problem. And we've talked about the size of the offensive line. We've talked about their physicality, but I think one thing that we haven't talked about is how well do they know the game? And I'm going to bring up the sack and the way that it happened. And later, I'm going to show you some other pieces of film and some interesting things that they did with the pass rush and the blitz that kind of said to me, like, okay, they figured out that whether or not they can out physical certain players on the O line may not matter as much as if they can confuse the O line so that they don't have to out physical these people at all. So let me see if I can pull this up. It's in a different window. I can. All right, let's see if we can get this to play properly.
In college football, when you look at the run of success they've had with.
Hold on, I'm gonna mute that just because it's really loud, and all that we really need to do is be able to see. Actually, let me just turn it down so I know that we're at the right spot.
Brand is one of the most trusted and still recognizable brands in college football. When you look at the run of success they've had with Heisman Trophy.
This really might not play properly.
Over the years, Luck, McCaffrey,
Of course.
Bryce Love had a great run and trying to get it cranked up again.
Okay, it's lagging on my end, but hopefully y'all saw what just happened, where basically they played with the timing of the pass rushers. So initially it looked like they were sending three, which would be odd, but 10 kind of delayed himself a little bit, and then he was able to get right through. So they only sent four. This was not like a blitz or anything. And I'm gonna go back and mute this to see if I can play this again now that I know I'm in the right part. But they only sent four, but they played with the timing instead of trying to attack them head on. And it even something as small as that seemed to confuse Colorado just enough. So watch, you have three in front, um, and then you see 10 is kind of trailing. 10 is at the 35 right now. So he went behind everybody else, which you would think would make him easier to pick up because those other guys should be looking for like, okay, what's our job now? But basically nobody touches him. He gets into the pocket and gets to Shedeur practically uncontested. And I think it's hard to tell from this view. I think that's 55 who kind of turns around, but 55 actually fucked up a lot. Yeah, so that was 55. So all he had to do was delay himself just a little bit and gets to Shedeur practically uncontested, was sacked. And I think that was when they were like, okay, it might be too late to make something happen in the first half. However, if we can keep playing with situations like this and just playing with the timing and playing with the personnel a little bit, we can actually cause a good bit of trouble for this offensive line. Um, Somebody tell me in the comments if y'all can still see me. Weird stuff is happening on my laptop, and I don't know if y'all can still hear me and see me. Hold on, let me see something. Let me see if that helps. Martin, if you're still watching, let me know if you heard everything that I just said, or if I was just frozen for a really long time. Um, Anyway, but yeah, so that was one of the things that I think they saw that they were like, okay, we actually don't have to do anything extremely physical. We don't have to do anything extremely complicated in order to trip up the O line. We can literally just, delay sometimes. We can play with the timing and it'll get the job done. And so I think when they came out in the second half, they were doing a lot more of that. If I have enough confidence in my Wi-Fi, I'll show y'all a few more instances of that. But that was one of the things that definitely changed is that it wasn't that exact thing, but things like that were happening to the O line a lot in the second half. So that was one of the things that really messed up the team. When it comes to the penalties, I hadn't counted these already, but in response to Carlton's earlier comment, I do want to go ahead and count these. So they had one substitution infraction in the first quarter. They had, let's see, there's one in the third quarter, and then they had one, two in the fourth quarter. So based on my count, they ended up with four substitution infractions. I don't understand why. They weren't really showing what was happening. But that's one of those things that I think when Coach Prime goes back and looks to see what exactly happened, um, sorry, I'm getting a lot of comments right now. Just wanted to make sure people weren't saying something important. And not that y'all aren't. I'm gonna just get to that in a second. I have a bad habit of trying to read the chat while I'm talking. We'll work on that. But yeah, so that's one of those things that like Coach Prime didn't really address it in the press conference very well. But I think once he goes back and looks and sees what exactly was happening, he's gonna take that a little bit more seriously than he took it in the press conference because that just makes zero sense. Like I've seen games where, something confusing happens and it's like a tense moment, a high pressure situation, and a team ends up with a substitution infraction because there's some sort of confusion. But to have four in a game as a college team, that does not make sense. That's something that definitely needs to be taken care of. And then outside of that, there was just more silly penalties. There was a delay of game. There was a holding. There was a couple of holding. There was an intentional grounding. So the penalties were all over the place. To say that there were 17 of them, but four substitution infractions, and then the ones that we talked about in the first half: two unsportsmanlike conduct, one illegal use of hands, a holding, two false starts. Yeah, it was really just more of the same. And the fact that they were all over the place is just, to me, more support for the idea that They just really weren't focused for a lot of this game. They may have had their focus on getting to a quick start, but they didn't have their focus on doing that for all 4 quarters. And honestly, that's one of the things that I said yesterday. Yesterday, I said that there were 2 things on the field and 2 things off the field that Colorado needed to make sure that they took care of in order to win this game. And that would determine if it was a loss, a win, or a blowout. And one of the things that I said was that they were going to have to show up early and they were going to have to make that last for 4 quarters. They showed up early. They did not make it last for 4 quarters. Um, what else? Going to the point that we were making about Travis. Travis on Ayo Namor. I don't think I'm saying his name right at all, but 13 on Stanford. Y'all know who I'm talking about. He ended up with 13 receptions for 294 yards and 3 touchdowns. He didn't get his first completion. He didn't get his first completed pass until the 3rd quarter. His first completed pass was, let's see. I gotta write it down. Oh yeah, so his first completed pass was with 10 minutes and 54 seconds left in the 3rd quarter, and it was an 18-yard pass that put them on the Colorado 9-yard line, and that was the first completion to him. So he did all of that in less than 2 quarters, and so that's why I was saying like, okay, I don't know what was going on with Travis, but we do know he wasn't on an island with that guy, right? We do know that they were leaving it all up to Travis to handle that, and Travis wasn't handling it. And so, even if you believe that, okay, Travis is the best player, in the moment, because of what Travis was showing the team, I really, really do think that they should have given someone else a chance to try to handle that guy. Um, because he just went off in the second half. Like, there's no other word for it. And then part of that even started with some of the penalties. So, in the 3rd quarter, the second sack of ShedeurSanders for the game happened with 12 minutes, 9 seconds, right? So then you fast forward, there's a holding penalty, there's another substitution infraction with 9 minutes and 15 seconds left. And then at 7 minutes, 22 seconds in the 3rd quarter, they end up with an offensive holding penalty, and that turns their 3rd and 3 to a 3rd and 13, right? So then after that, everything kind of snowballs. You go from a 3rd and 3 to a 3rd and 13. Right after that, you have a pass incompletion to Travis, which, had they been a third and 3, maybe it would have been an easier pass. Maybe it would have been a run play. I don't know. But that's one of those penalties that I was talking about that like that hurt them in more than just yardage. It put them in a situation that went from, hey, this is easy to handle to, hey, now we have to take a bigger risk. And that risk didn't pay off. It was an incomplete pass to Travis Hunter. They ended up punting the ball away, and the play immediately following that for Stanford was that 97-yard touchdown. And on that touchdown, whoever it was, he ended up falling down. So I guess for a second there was somebody else on 13 for Stanford besides Travis, and that person literally tripped and fell or slipped and fell. I'm not sure, but Stanford went out on the field, one play, 97 yards, got a touchdown. Colorado went back and they answered with a 3-and-out. Then Stanford goes back on the field immediately following that 3-and-out, and they got a 2-play drive that led to a touchdown. And so that's one of those things that I'm just like, okay, here's one area where this penalty did more than just cost you 10 yards. Because had that been a 3rd and 3, maybe you run a simpler play, actually convert it, get that first down, you keep going. Maybe you put points on the board in that drive. But instead, a holding penalty takes you from 3rd and 3 to 3rd and 13, and everything that I just described is what played out. Who knows? Like, Stanford might not have had the momentum that they had it not been for that penalty. Like, literally, that's like an actual possibility. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, if I were one of the coaches in the room, that's one of the things that I would drive home to these players when it comes to staying focused, doing your job, doing what you're supposed to do, and making sure that you're not costing your team, not only in the moment, but just as the game goes on. But yeah, Shedeur ended up being like sacked 2 more times in that quarter, got an intentional grounding. The 3rd quarter was just like I was trying not to cuss in this because like I don't know who might see it, but I gotta say the 3rd quarter was just a shit show for Colorado. It was. Now let me look at some of y'all's comments and then we'll get back into this. Me says I'm late. I went to sleep and they were up. Surprise, surprise. An unpleasant surprise. I'm sorry. Cole said, let's see. I know I'm late coming in the show, but how do you feel about Coach Prime's comment in the postgame presser? He is getting heat for not taking accountability. We kind of talked about that a little bit. Let me come back to that in just a second. I'm hungry, y'all. I'm like, my stomach is growling. I hope y'all can't hear it through the mic. Me Just Me said, I got to catch up on the highlights. And we love Prime, of course, but he came at my boys. Now look at his boys. Oh, don't do that. I love how mental football can be. Okay, let me just say this. What he said about the Cowboys was not unwarranted. It was not unjustified. There are some people on the team who are supposed to be dogs who did not show up as dogs against the 49ers. So I can't be mad at him. But there are also some people who, as we mentioned a few minutes ago, on his team who are supposed to be both leaders and dogs, and they are not showing up. So yeah, he needs to handle that. Um, Martin said, or put a safety over the top on Travis's side. Yes, that also would help. The only thing that I can think is that because 13 was literally silent in the first half, they weren't paying attention to him. And each play, maybe they literally thought that, oh, it's just a one off, it's just a one off. But after the third quarter, I definitely would have done something, a lot of things differently. The third quarter was just abysmal for them. It was terrible. Um, Such facts, sis, but it comes around so fast. It really does. And I can't say it wasn't karma because, like, he didn't have to say it like that, but I can't pretend like he wasn't unjustified. But I will say, like, yes, Coach Prime, you also have some people on your team who's supposed to be dogs, but, and also some people who's supposed to be leaders, but, so yeah, let's handle it all the way around. Let's hope, this Monday and not next Saturday because Colorado has a bye, but the Saturday after that, everybody shows up as the leaders and dogs that they're supposed to be. I'm just gonna speak that into the universe. Yes. Um, Coles, to answer your question, one, thanks for showing up. I'm glad to have you here. But one of the things that I was talking about is that Coach Prime, he processes his emotions a little bit differently. And I think he goes into these press conferences and he's prepared to talk about certain things, and certain things he's simply not prepared to talk about until he has a little bit more time to look in depth at what exactly happened. There have been times where he said that directly, where he's been asked about a player and he's literally said, I want to look at the film, I want to look at the footage before I answer that. My hair is doing weird shit. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm still getting used to this hair, whatever. There's been times where he's answered that directly, but there's also, don't judge me, you guys, but there's also been times where it just seems like he'll give like a different answer to the question and not specifically answer the question or not directly answer the question. And then like in a midweek press conference, you might get a better answer. So that may be what's happening with some of the questions that he answered during the press conference, where he just doesn't feel comfortable saying anything until he has an opportunity to look a little bit deeper into the situation. Um, Martin is really getting a kick out of this whole now look at his boy situation. So yeah, we talked about the penalties. We talked about number 13 from Stanford going off. And we also talked about what happened before the second half. So I'm gonna try to show y'all some of the other stuff that I noticed in the second half. We'll see how the Wi-Fi and how the video footage shows up. Um, but yeah, I just want to show y'all a couple of more examples of what happened with the offensive line, just because I feel like it's significant as we continue this conversation that's been ongoing throughout the season about what exactly is happening with the O line. Because one thing that we know, we talk about the NFL being a copycat league, but football is a copycat sport. And what Stanford did to the Colorado O line is not something that's particularly complicated or difficult, in my opinion. So I feel like if it worked so well against them being an unranked team that Colorado was expected to beat, let's look at Colorado's schedule for the rest of the year, because it's not like it gets any easier from here. So they have the bye week. After that, they're facing UCLA, ranked number 18. After that, they're facing Oregon State, currently ranked 15th. After that, they're facing Arizona, who is not ranked right now, but is not exactly a pushover. After that, they've got Washington State, ranked number 19. And then after that, Utah, who is currently 16, right? So their schedule doesn't get any easier. So any team that might be concerned about, like, hey, when this team gets hot, they really start executing, they really start putting points on the board, we need to make sure that they don't get hot. they might look at what Stanford did to this O-line and be like, yo, instead of waiting until less than 5 minutes left in the first half to start doing stuff like this, we can come out and do stuff like this out the gate. So one of the things that happened is, let's see, um, there's a section of this where all I wrote was 55 looked confused as hell. So let me try to go to that section and see if the stream will fuck with us today. These are the kinds of things that if I had more time, I would pull the clips and put them on my computer so that they're easier to play. So if for some reason it doesn't go well, just look out for another video and I might go into detail and show y'all some things. Okay, so this particular formation, I honestly first noticed it because it's actually kind of pretty. It's very symmetrical in triangle shapes. Don't judge me, you guys. Like I said, I started this podcast as a complete and total fangirl. But you see there are two defenders who it looks like either one of them could come down and join the pass rush. And so I didn't write it down, but I think that was the thing that happened that kind of got them a little bit confused. But I want you to watch what happens when that player does join, and I also want you to watch what happens with number 55. So play starts. The one towards the bottom of the screen is the one that comes forward. Now, what I want y'all to notice right here is that only one extra person was added, but yet somehow two people ended up getting to Shedeur with nobody on them hardly. So what that tells me is that, and as you can see all the way to the left, there's like two people on that defender. And then on the other side, you've got three people who are staring at two people, and none of them are really on anybody. I think one person might be on one person, but you've got like basically three defenders who are looking very confused. But based on where those two defenders came through, 55 definitely should have picked up at least one of them. But I'm like, you've got five people on your O-line. You've got five people total who are going after your quarterback. It should have been a one-on-one situation. So what that tells me is that whenever you start playing with timing, whenever you start delaying a defender, whatever's happening with Colorado's O-line, they don't handle it well. It seems like they get easily confused and it makes them miss assignments in very big ways. Not like, okay, I'm thrown off, my balance is off, like completely missing people. So I'm gonna let this play out and then I'm gonna rewind it. So he gets that pass off, but like at what cost? You know, stuff like this is why ShedeurSanders is the most sacked and most hit quarterback in college right now. So I can only go back 15 seconds at a time. So sorry, it's gonna play a little bit extra, but I'm just going back so y'all can kind of watch that again. So we can watch that again. I'm just excited that the stream is is actually acting right. So once again, watch the linebacker that's like more towards the bottom of the screen behind the defensive line. So you can see like already that first defender that gets to Shedeur is already through the pocket. Like 55. Well, it might not have been 55 who messed up. I don't know. But yeah, pocket completely disintegrates. Two people get to Shedeur. It's ridiculous. Um, And the reason why I said 55 was looking confused as hell because, you know, he's standing there. He's the one right by the 30-yard line right now. And he literally was just kind of looking around. Like with better resolution, you might be able to see it. I don't think it's coming through here, but he literally was like looking around like what happened? Like who was I supposed to be on? What was I supposed to be doing? Yeah. So the next thing is actually a little bit later in the same drive. So we can just kind of let it play because I don't really know what happens next. But I don't think it's this play. We can watch this one, but I think the next thing that I wanted to look at actually happened. No, it actually happens later. Hold on. We're going to fast forward a little bit, which I'm guessing is fine because I don't see anything in the comments but Martin laughing, presumably at number 55. Let's see. I'm trying to get it on the right spot. I don't think that's going to work. So we're going to start here. And what I'm looking at is actually a few seconds after this. Okay, so here we go. Um, Practically the same formation. If not exactly the same, it's very similar. So this is what I meant whenever I said like what Stanford is doing is not something that's hard to duplicate. It's not something that's hard to execute. It's literally something that, especially whenever you start looking at those like top teams, those ranked teams, that I'm pretty sure if, especially with there being like a whole bye week, if they really wanted to practices, even just to break out a couple of times, they 100% could, you know? Oh, I was like, what was I looking for with this one? So I wrote down watch number 11. There's no hope for Hankerson. So let me go back and see exactly what happened. So, okay, we're going to have to go back a few more seconds. So what happens here is Hankerson is the lineman that's more towards the bottom of the screen. And basically, nobody picks him up. Now, he could have been undisciplined and been like, okay, nobody picked me up. I'm going to go straight for Shedeur. But what actually happens is he just kind of waits. He kind of waits to see what's going to happen. And then he ends up basically just like swallowing Hankerson like really close towards the line of scrimmage because nobody stopped him from doing that. And it's another one of those situations where you pretty much have initially, like, I know it ends up being like a big cluster, like very soon, but initially you have a 5-on-5. Somebody should have seen that guy, in my opinion. But let's watch it again. I wish I had like a little marker to like circle people. All right, so yeah, number 11 is the lineman that's furthest to Shedeur's left. So watch, he takes like a couple of steps forward, and then he's like, oh, nobody's gonna touch me. I'm just gonna stand here and watch. He's literally just standing there and watching. Nobody touches him. And then the handoff goes to Hankerson. And because 11 went untouched, he's like, okay, I got my homeboy coming down to help, so we'll just handle this runner. And that's essentially what happens. It looks like someone tries to get between 11 and Hankerson late, but by then, Hankerson's already so ready to handle the situation that he basically pushes another Colorado player directly into Hankerson, you know? And that's why they only got 2 yards. And then I really need to keep better notes if I'm gonna do this in the future. I'm gonna work on this, but not this play that's about to happen, but a play later. I wrote, "What is 77 doing?" So we'll fast forward and we'll see what exactly 77 is doing, and that's 77 for Colorado. So yeah, similar setup again. It seems to be like their go-to. All right, so now we got what should be a one-on-one situation. We got 5 D linemen on 5 O linemen. Or not D linemen, y'all know what I mean. 5 defenders on 5 O linemen. But, so I think 77 is the one at the top who just basically, yeah, doesn't touch anybody and leaves Shedeur very vulnerable in that situation. And it's one of those situations that like makes those players like look like even better than they are. Nothing against Wright. I'm sure he's an excellent player, but you know, we've never seen anything from Stanford in the past that suggests that they have defenders that are so good that they should just be like getting through untouched like that, right? But watching that one more time, watching what's happening with 6 up at the top. 6 is the one that's like furthest to the top of the screen right now, up here. Yeah, so 77 like literally reaches his right arm out, and 6 is like, what is that supposed to do? And ends up with a really, really big sack. So yeah, this is what I mean whenever I say it's like simple things, like things so simple you can hardly even call it trickery that people are doing to the O line to where it's like, okay, I don't have to out physical you. I don't have to go up against you one on one. I can literally just like trick your eyes, which doesn't seem to make much, and you won't even touch me. Um, and so yeah, that's gonna be like a really big problem moving forward. And now not only having evidence that the O line can be out physical, but also having so much evidence that it's like really easy to trick them and it's so easy to make them miss assignments. I feel like this whole situation with the O-line is going to become even bigger. It's going to become an even bigger problem for Shedeur. And with it being that they're going against so many good teams, so many ranked teams in the second half of the season, I'm very concerned. But they have a whole bye week that hopefully they can do something with this time to prevent this from becoming a bigger issue. Because there was a point last night where you did see Shedeur kind of limp. He got hit really hard on the side, went to the ground, and it looked like, either something in his rib cage or something on a hip. It was something on the side of his body that just was not as comfortable as he needed it to be for him to walk properly. So I'm concerned for him, but we'll see what happens. But those are my biggest takeaways from what happened as far as on the field. Now, for anyone who wants to stick around, there is one more thing that I want to address, and that is the off the field component of what's going on with Colorado. So this morning, someone posted in response to one of my posts, they said something along the lines of, oh, it might be time to get more disciplined and stop with the flashy stuff. And so I'm gonna read, and Martin, feel free to keep leaving comments about what happened on the field. I'll come back to it, but I want to read my comment to that, or my reply to that, because it's related to how I feel about a lot of what's happening. Because and don't take this as a knock on this person. I said this because I saw a lot of people say like, oh, they need to stop with the flashy stuff and they need to stop doing this and they need to stop doing that. But here's what I said in response to this person. But really, the reason why I quote tweeted it was because this is kind of like a message to everybody who thinks this way. I said respectfully, and I mean that sincerely, like no disrespect to this person, like I said, I don't think connecting wins and losses to flashy stuff is the route that they will go. It gives those things too much power. Stuff like that bothers the masses because they've been taught to associate those things with external measures of success. Coach Prime is teaching discipline and accountability regardless of external love or hate or flashy stuff. That's why he's pissed. Because he saw them get distracted by the fast start and the momentum they had in the first half. He saw them falling off before they even went into the locker room. He will be honest, he will be stern, he will be tough on them, but he's not going to shame them into submission. He's not going to send a message that their value as young men is diminished because of this loss. So anyone who's bothered by flashy stuff should look away. That's not how the Colorado Buffaloes are going to address this, and they're not going to stop telling that part of the story. So to further clarify, what I'm saying is, in terms of a quote unquote punishment for how they played, him being like, okay, no more chains, no more social media, that's not Coach Prime's style. Because if anything, he wants to teach them, hey, regardless of the change, regardless of the social media, you need to do what you came to do. Somebody in the replies made the point that last year, Colorado went 1-11 and they didn't have all the change and they didn't have the flashy stuff, right? And so I think it's one of those things where if there's somebody who's not doing their job, if there's somebody who's not stepping up, if there's somebody who's not handling their position responsibly, he's going to handle that person regardless of whether or not they're wearing chains, jewelry, watches, on social media, got NIL, don't have NIL, whatever. That's what he's going to address, you know? And so him just being like, no chains, that's just like one of those punishment things that doesn't really address the issue, because taking that away doesn't guarantee that they're going to do what they need to do, at practice, in terms of watching film, on the field. It doesn't guarantee that they do what he needs them to do, and I think that's his biggest concern. Anytime you ask him, that's always what the biggest concern is. He wants them to show up and be who they're supposed to be. And all the stuff that's coming along with the team, you can't even really say it's a direct result of like them winning or them losing, or people thinking they're winning or people thinking that they're going to lose. Because even with how that game went last night, once again, their post-game press conferences did numbers and numbers and numbers on top of what you normally see for college post-game press conferences. So people are still watching. People are still interested. People still want to see how this story unfolds. It's not that people think this team is so great, that they think this team is championship worthy. It's that people are generally interested in the story. And in support of that, I want to play something that the announcers said during the game. And I actually do have this on my computer, so it should play properly. But it was Mark Jones and Louis Riddick who were doing the announcing for this game. And Mark Jones made a comment that is really interesting in the context of all this. So I'm going to let it play, and then I'm going to talk a little bit more about the significance of what he said, and then we'll get up out of here.
We talk about the impact of Coach Prime, not just here, but in Boulder. You know, we have one of our colleagues, Demo, our associate producer in the truck, that director in the truck, lives in East Lansing, walking through one of the stores. This is what it looked like in Michigan State territory. Coach Prime gear prominently displayed in a lot of the stores, in the merchandise.
You see it all throughout this stadium.
And you know, it's interesting, it's kind of harkens back the impact that we see of Buffaloes football almost to, you know, a lot of the Georgetown Hoyas merch that we used to see back in the day. Sometimes, you gotta say this, when success looks this different to people, it scares people.
Yep.
It becomes a little bit polarizing, but Coach Prime has been unapologetic in the way that he does things, and it's working, and I love it.
Look, he is touching just about every section of America right now in terms of, you know, men, women, white, black, football, baseball. You see it there on your screen. Bryce Harper using some of Deion's It's Personal gear, you know, to kind of motivate him in the baseball playoffs. And I'm telling you, look, do not get all caught up in the exterior and how Deion has become a master marketer.
Exactly.
The guy is an old school football player, old school football coach.
Alejandro Mata did not get all of that.
All right. And honestly, like, if you want to be superstitious, we should have known when Mata missed that kick that trouble was coming, because that just did not seem like something that he would miss. But anyway, what I actually want to focus on is what they were saying about what Mark Jones said about how when success looks this different, it can be a little bit scary. It can be a little bit polarizing, right? And right before that, he mentioned the Georgetown Hoyas. And I don't know why I didn't think of this example sooner. Maybe because of, you know, where I was in life when the Hoyas were like popular. I have a memory of them being popular, but I wasn't like, you know, into them like that. Let me read a couple of y'all's comments, and then I'm gonna go a little bit deeper into this whole Georgetown Hoyas thing that was mentioned. Martin, good comments here. You might know more about football than I realized that you knew, but thank you. Um, we'll talk in the back channels. Marketing at its best. Do you have the stats for Emmett's son, EJ? I do not. Sorry. But yeah, there's a little bit that I want to share about the Georgetown Hoyas, because I do think that there's definitely a bit of a parallel between what happened with the Hoyas and what's happening with the Colorado Buffaloes. So I pulled up a couple of articles, and here's one that doesn't really have it has like a bunch of references, so I know the information is valid, but it doesn't have a title, so pardon me. But this article says Georgetown University men's basketball did not win any championships in the 90s. None, the whole 90s. How could a team without any hardware make such an impact? Now, this was before social media, before NIL, right? So like everybody is being like, oh, social media, NIL, Prime is taking advantage, yada, yada, yada. But let me read those sentences again. Georgetown University men's basketball did not win any championships in the 90s. How could a team without any hardware make such an impact? Sporting a hard-nosed, in-your-face style of play, trend-setting, edgy players, and a giant of a coach, Georgetown came to define the transformative era that was 90s college basketball. In the context of the African-American experience in the 90s, it's worth noting that Georgetown is not an HBCU. And if we have time, we'll talk about this whole Colorado HBCU thing that happened. But yeah. Given the majority white demographics of the school, the team was mostly African American in the 1990s, and John Thompson Jr. is an African American coach. Upon arrival at Georgetown in the late 1970s, Thompson endured racial slurs thrown at him by disgruntled alumni and was thought to be an ineffective coach due to the color of his skin. Thompson worked hard to prove everyone wrong. The 1980s brought a national championship and a 96% graduation rate of his players. Viewed by his players as more of a father figure than a basketball coach, his style was domineering and controlling. He limited player interactions with the media and kept close tabs on his team on road trips. Fast forward, By the early 1990s, Georgetown basketball apparel was regularly outselling Power Football Conference brands. Georgetown starter jackets and jerseys became wildly popular across the United States. The team was especially resonant with Black America. The team was all black, had a black coach, and played in a majority black ran city. Washington, D.C. Had been called the Chocolate City for some time. And what was previously a predominantly white team full of former parochial league players gave way to a majority black team with some players who came from single parent households, disadvantaged neighborhoods, and junior colleges. Georgetown went from having a small and regional following to having the aura of a national professional sports team. Now, does that not sound a little bit familiar? You know, even without social media, even without NIL, even without a lot of the things that people attribute to Coach Prime's success, that story sounds very familiar. And a majority white team turning to a majority black team, you know, becoming a national sensation, a coach that sounds like a father figure, the apparel deals, all of that definitely sounds like a parallel. And before I go a little bit deeper into that, I want to read from one more article. This article actually came from Slate.com. It was published in 2007, written by Mike DeBonis. And towards the middle of this article, which is titled "The World's Most Dangerous Basketball Team." Hold on, Hold on, let me go. Yeah, the world's most dangerous basketball team. Towards the middle of this article, it says, "But the fear back then had as much to do with race as hoops. Georgetown basketball under John Thompson." Fucking ads, get the hell off my screen! I'm trying to read. Georgetown basketball under John Thompson was always intertwined with racial politics. That was inevitable when an elite Eastern university, then as now overwhelmingly white, started fielding teams made up almost exclusively of black players. When Thompson came to Georgetown in 1972, he wasn't plucked from some other sideline legends coaching tree. Sound familiar? Rather, he had been plying his trade at a tiny Catholic high school in Northeast Washington, D.C., at a time when the only notable black coaches were Lenny Wilkens and Bill Russell, both player coaches for NBA teams. Mediocre Georgetown teams composed of white parochial school graduates soon became a relic. Thompson recruited inner city black players, often well after they'd graduated high school. He had to wait for one of his first recruits, Mike Riley, to finish a hitch in the Navy. And then the Hoyas' rise came shortly after the founding of the Big East Conference in 1979. Fast forward. This was the first college sports team to become a brand, and it was a tremendously lucrative one. By the early 90s, Georgetown apparel outsold even schools with powerhouse football programs. Georgetown starter jackets sold well across the country, but the team's image was especially resonant in Black America. Not only was this an all-black team with a black head coach, the Hoyas also played in a majority black city run by a black mayor, and then it kind of repeats some of the stuff that we read in the last article. And it adds, eventually the racial cues became more overt, most famously in the kente cloth trimmed uniforms of the Iverson era. Now, it would really be something if Colorado ended up with some kente cloth trimmed uniforms. I don't think we'll see that. But the reason why I read from both those articles was to reinforce the point that I'm about to make. And it's the point that a lot of the people making these points about, like, oh, they need to chill out with the flashy stuff, they want to see these young men shrink themselves so bad, so bad. Out of all the things that I just mentioned, issues with the O-line, issues with discipline that's leading to penalties, not showing up for both halves, not showing up for all four quarters, possible mismanagement of personnel. Out of all that stuff, what do they want? They want to see these dudes stop wearing jewelry and stay off social media. Why? Like, why is that relevant if you're actually concerned about the success of the team? And it's because of a couple of reasons, right? People have this mentality like things like that should only be reserved for winners. Let me tell you something about winning. When we're talking about winning championships, winning these games, these are rules that are created by people. Football isn't even the same game that it was decades ago. If you were to go back to some of the rule sets that existed in the earlier parts of the 20th century, the game and who we think is great and who we think is elite would look entirely different. So all of this is really up to people living according to the standards that were created by a group of dudes who felt like the game should just change. And I think we have to be really careful about judging someone's value or determining their value based on how they perform in a game for that very reason. The rules can change, the circumstances can change. What these young guys are doing, what Coach Prime is trying to get them to do, is to find value, figure out a way to turn their lives around, figure out a way to be like some sort of professional, to do something with their lives besides the direction that it would be on without football. Like he's basically just using football as a medium, right? So when we start saying they don't deserve to celebrate themselves, they don't deserve to be popular, they don't deserve to be liked, they don't deserve to be supported, they don't deserve to reap the benefits of their own image because they're not good at this man created game, to me that just sends like a very negative message. Yes, we want them to be good at the game because we support the team, we want to see the team win, we want to see them win championships, right? But we should also want to see these young men develop as human beings too. So when I see just this constant need for them to shrink themselves, for them to not enjoy themselves, for them to not reap the benefits of what it is that they're bringing to the masses in terms of press coverage, in terms of content, it just doesn't sit well with me. And then as far as the racial component, I know not everybody who has a problem with the image of the team is racist. I know that. But part of the reason why I read those two excerpts from the articles about the Hoyas and wanted to drive home how big race was of an issue back then, I want to drive that home just to point out that sometimes arguments kind of get like cleaned up a little bit, and by the time that argument gets to a certain person, you might hear the version of it that has nothing to do with race, right? You might hear the version of it where somebody's like, oh no, it's the principle of the thing. And you might really believe it's the principle of the thing. But a lot of these things are rooted in racism. They're rooted in prejudice and they're rooted in bigotry. So you have to really be careful about who you're retweeting and who you're supporting and whose side you're on. Because even if you aren't racist, even if you aren't a bigot, you could be supporting arguments that at their core are racist and bigoted. And next thing you know, you end up retweeting somebody who later on that day says some shit like, oh, Oregon is taking a stand for all of us. And then when they're questioned on taking a stand for who, taking a stand against what, all of a sudden they go quiet because they realize they let that argument go a little bit too far. They didn't mean to let that much of their true colors show, you know? And people might be like, oh, that was a long time ago. Oh, that was decades ago. Let me tell you something about how humans change over decades. There was a solar eclipse earlier today, an annular solar eclipse. Now, when it comes to things like sun worship, when it comes to things like looking at natural phenomenon and assigning spiritual significance to it, a lot of people would tell you, no, that's stuff that happened millennia ago. Today's human beings are smarter. Today's human beings don't do that. I was watching live feeds of this eclipse and I saw people crying. I get emails where people are like talking about the zodiac and things that you should and shouldn't do during this weekend because of the effects of the solar eclipse and how that's going to affect the energy in the atmosphere and what it does to your zodiac. And if you follow me, you know I do the zodiac thing, but not so much that I'm going to up and just not do my live stream because there was a solar eclipse this morning. I saw one of my neighbors go out and try to look at it directly, apparently because she thought it would, I don't know, bless her or give her some kind of good omen for the rest of the year. I say all this to say, even in 2023, there are people who are assigning spiritual significance and emotions to something like a solar eclipse, right? So people change, but they don't change that much. Yes, millennia ago, it might have been a bunch of people in the town square talking about the eclipse being a sign from God. And today, it was a YouTube live of a bunch of people in Kerrville, Texas, talking about, I didn't think I would cry. This is so moving. This is so emotional. If you didn't know it was a solar eclipse, honestly, it's like it got a little dark outside and then it wasn't. That's what happened. Like the moon was in between the earth and the sun and it got a little dark outside. Like had I not known it was a solar eclipse, had it not come across my phone and people not told me, I might not have even noticed because since it was an annular eclipse, meaning there was like a ring around the moon, it was like a ring of fire, it didn't even get completely dark. Through my shades, it kind of looked a little cloudy. But anyway, off the eclipse, I thought the eclipse was cool. I kind of wanted to see it. I didn't have time to get the shades and whatever. That's why I watched the YouTube live. So like, even I'm a person who thinks the shit is cool. But I say all this as a point to say people don't change that much. So don't think that just because it's 2023 that there's no way that people could be saying things against this team, about this team, against Coach Prime, against his sons that's not racist. Don't think that they aren't going into on some of these away game trips and that they're not hearing some really awful things yelled at them from those stadium seats. And I'm not saying that there has to be some sort of crusade to protect the team, that they're like really being treated poorly. That's not what I'm saying. Like, for by all accounts, they're in a pretty good situation, every single one of them. All I'm saying is that yes, there are racial undertones. It is real, and I don't think it's okay to ignore that just because these kids are making a lot of money. That's my main thing. Martin said, I would think it would be raining if it got dark outside. No, it didn't rain, just sun blacked out. But anyway, that's all I have to say about that. So like I always say, I hope they keep wearing their jewelry and their shades. I just hope they are able to match that with a little bit of film watching. I hope their O-line really steps up. I was talking to somebody yesterday before the game, and they were talking about Shedeur, and I was like, it's not Shedeur's fault that his O-line secretly wants to see him dead. And they laugh, but I'm just like, good God, just sometimes the lack of effort they put forth. Did y'all see 77? I don't want to go back to it because I don't feel like finding it again. But he did this. He did this. He didn't even move both feet. He did this. That's the kind of O-line ShedeurSanders is dealing with, y'all. It's getting scary. And based on what was put on film and how effective it was in eliminating a 29-point lead, I feel like it's going to get scarier. So prayers and positive vibes going out to Colorado, especially Shedeur. And even though it's a bye week, I'm going to be watching all the videos to see what happens. So if anything significant happens with the team, like I always say, have your notifications turned on because I will be here to talk about it. Thanks for sitting here with me so long. If you are catching the tail end of this, or if you are catching the replay, please like the video. Please subscribe. I'm going to add timestamps to it, so please share it, especially if the timestamps are there. If you see a timestamp that you think is relevant to somebody please share it. And I look forward to talking with y'all sometime this week and next weekend. But in the meantime, that's all I got for you guys. I'm Bitch 2, and I'm out.